So I've only ever broken one bone, and it was on a school camp in year 8. So I would have been about 12 or 13 at the time. I think I was 13. And it wasn't a very bad break. It was just a fracture. And moments before I broke my arm, I had the thought to myself of, the thing I'm doing right now is stupid. If it goes badly, I am going to fall off of this railing that I am attempting to slide down and break my arm. And then I fell and landed on my arm and started crying because it was a lot of pain, but mostly because I was in shock. I knew it had happened. I knew I expected it to happen. But that didn't change the fact that, it was a jolt to my system. It was sudden pain. I was safely on a railing, well, somewhat safely on a railing, and then I was on the floor, on my arm, oh gosh darn, with gravel scrapes all over me, because of course I fell onto gravel. Of course I did that. It's not enough to fall and break my arm. I had to graze myself too. So I started crying, and in those days I was known as crying. I'm quite an emotional person. I wonder if I can just... No, I can't place it. So students rushed to my aid. There were no teachers around. One of the students who became the head girl of our school was immediately at my side, making sure I was okay. She must have done some first aid training, because she checked in on me, made sure that I didn't have a concussion. She made sure that I could move my arm and my fingers, because I'd landed on my arm. She told me with the utmost confidence, I don't think it's broken. I think it's just hurt. And as she was checking over me, she instructed some of the other students to go and get a teacher. So not long after that, a teacher showed up, and they looked over me, asked me what had happened. They let me sit at the teacher's table while all of the other kids went off to do an activity because I was in pain. The other kids were setting up to do a game, which I really didn't want to do. It was the nighttime activity. As a bit of an exaggeration, I would rather... This exaggeration has been deemed unsafe for YouTube and thus has been censored. Then play that game. I really don't enjoy that game. So I was perfectly okay with sitting out of that game. I probably would have anyway. But the teachers were so apologetic about it. They were like, oh, maybe if you're feeling better soon you can play it. Oh, I'm so sorry that you're missing out. And they asked if it still hurt, which I responded, yeah, it still hurts, but I'm mostly alright. It's just some painkillers would be nice. They asked if there was anything they could do to help. I said painkillers would be nice. I think I asked what was for dinner and talked about my theories for how camp dinners worked, because whenever I go on a school camp anywhere, whenever I go on camp, there was always spaghetti on the first night. So I asked, that sounded like armor breaking. I don't remember. Oh, I had leather boots. I hope those weren't important. Yeah, there's always spaghetti for the first night, so I was theorizing about what there would be for dinner. I was, overall, pretty much acting like everything was okay. Which, it occurs to me now, is probably why the teachers did not believe me that I had broken my arm. Now, they believed I was in pain. They knew they had to take me to the hospital. As a duty of care thing, they had to take me to the local hospital. We were out in a country town as part of the camp. It wasn't by school or home or any of that. So we had to go to this little tiny country hospital, which is the worst laid out hospital I have ever seen. I mean, hospitals are usually like mazes. They are usually really difficult to navigate unless you're very familiar with them. This one is the worst that I have seen. It was so difficult to navigate even while I was having nurses show me around. There were, by my recollection, 3 staff there that I saw. And there was one other patient who didn't look injured, looked younger than me, but was crying and freaking out, and I was pretty calm. So I was okay with the fact that they let him go first, even though I had arrived first. I'd been in the waiting room longer. So the nurses had me fill out a little survey to ask what was going on. And I don't remember much of it, but I remember that one very stupid question that I did not agree with on the survey was, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being no pain at all, 10 being the most amount of pain you can vividly remember being in, how much pain are you in right now? And I assured them very, very forcefully. I was taking a lot of issue with this survey. I was like, this is a stupid question. On any normal scale, I would currently be at a 4, maybe a 5, maybe a 6. Like, yes, I am in pain, but I am fully capable of doing everything I need to do. It is uncomfortable pain. It is very definitely not amount of pain I want to be in. I would very much like some painkillers. I'd been saying for a couple of hours now, whether or not the arm is broken, all they're really going to be able to do for me is painkillers and a sling. So I would like some painkillers, please, and a sling might be nice. Because, moving my arm hurts and theoretically would make it worse. So whether or not my arm is broken, I would like a sling so that I am moving it less and can, start to heal instead of making it worse before I get treatment. I wasn't given either of these things until after we left the hospital, as we were leaving. But, of course, the amount of pain I'm in right now is as much as I can vividly remember. If this scale was the amount of pain you've ever been in, I would have been maybe a 7. I've definitely been in more pain than that. I mean, I don't want to get too gruesome, but I have had a chunk of my ear removed while I was awake by a limestone wall, which is a story that I might tell another time. That was definitely worse than fracturing my arm. But I couldn't vividly remember the amount of pain because it had been a long time before, at least 4 or 5 years before, maybe 6 years before I broke my arm. So, of course, the pain that I was currently in is the most amount of pain that I can remember being in. I was like, on your stupid scale, it's a 10, but it shouldn't be treated as a 10 because it's not a 10. And I think they said something along the lines of, oh, well, if it's a 10, we have to act fast. And then I was like the last patient they got to. Last is being extreme. I was the second patient they got to. There was only one other patient. But they had arrived after I did. So they got me, they did an x-ray. The doctor who was taking me through the x-ray asked if I could hold my arm at a specific angle or if it hurt too much. He said you'd have to hold it for about 2 minutes at that angle for us to get the x-ray we need. And I said, if that's the x-ray you need, I can do it. He said, if it hurts too much, you don't have to. But if that's what needed to be done, I could do it. It was uncomfortable, sure. It hurt, but it didn't hurt an excruciating amount. After the first, 45 seconds, I could ignore the pain. After the x-ray was done and when I moved my arm again, I realized how much pain I had actually been in. It was It was a lot. It was not very comfortable. But if that's the x-ray that needed to be done to tell them what was wrong with my arm, sure. I couldn't guarantee that it wasn't going to make my arm worse, but if a medical professional is telling me that that's the angle I should hold my arm at for them to get the results they need, that's the angle I'm going to hold my arm at. So a while after the x-rays, they finally get back to me. They tell me that I have, in fact, fractured my arm. They say, all we can do for you is pretty much painkillers and a sling. There's not much we can do to help heal this, except trying not to bump it or anything. You shouldn't use your arm for too much. They gave me like a time frame for when I would be able to lift things with my arm again, and they said even if it doesn't hurt too much, it's probably best for the healing process that you don't push yourself too far, which is reasonable, and I listened to them, even though it wouldn't have hurt me too much because, you know, I held my arm in a position for 2 minutes that my arm did not want to be in because I just decided to ignore the fact that it hurt. I recognized that there was pain, and then I said, I don't need to worry about that right now, and so I didn't. And, it only occurs to me now that the reason everyone was so doubtful, like, it took me pretty much, it took me like 2.5 hours for the teachers to actually take me to the hospital, and the whole time they were saying, like, does it still hurt? If it still hurts in another hour or so, maybe we'll have to take you to the hospital, but if it eases up, you'll be fine. I was like, I mean, I might have broken it. It's probably best to take me to the hospital anyway, just to double check, but sure, I mean, yeah, it still hurts. I think it's going to continue hurting, but whatever. Maybe that's why no one took me seriously. Like, if I had been bawling my eyes out the entire time, they would have taken me to the hospital a lot sooner. But they didn't. And it was only once the doctor had said that I had, in fact, broken my arm while we were outside the hospital waiting for one of the other teachers to come by in a car and pick us up. A teacher came with me, but there were only so many cars to go around, and in case there was another emergency, they couldn't take the only car with us to the hospital, so we had a teacher driving and a teacher staying with me, and it was a big mess for everyone involved because these teachers have a duty of care for like 100 students. While we were waiting for that car in the hospital, I don't remember whether I said, should we call my parents now, or whether the teacher said we should call your parents now. But either way, it was only after I had taken some painkillers, you know, like 4 hours after saying, can I please have some painkillers maybe, that I did call my parents. I know my dad's number off by heart because he is my emergency contact. He is the one who handles emergencies well. So I borrowed the teacher's phone because, of course, we're not allowed to bring our own phones on a school camp. Borrowed the teacher's phone, called my dad, told him what was going on, asked the teacher to look at my medical information, which they had to bring with me when I went to the hospital, to find my mother's phone number because she had gotten a new phone fairly recently. At this time, it was not a number I knew off by heart, so I asked her to find my mother's number, and I knew that my mother would be a lot less calm than my father about me breaking my arm. So I called my dad first. We talked it through. I got all my freak out done with him, who can remain sane and rational when learning that your child has gotten themselves severely injured. He asked if I wanted to stay at the camp or if I wanted him to come and pick me up. And I assured him that I wanted to stay because there was going to be sailing on Thursday. I broke my arm Tuesday night. There was going to be sailing on Thursday, and I was going to do the sailing if it killed me. So he said, okay, let me know if that changes. I called my mother, and I said to her very calmly, I've gotten injured, I'm okay, we're taking care of me. The doctor says that I got this kind of fracture. It's been like 6 years. I don't remember what type of fracture it was. It was the fancy name for basically a hairline fracture. And it was right by my elbow, so it's good that it didn't break further up my arm, because elbows are difficult to deal with, and just like my forearm, much less difficult. And I told my mother very calmly that I wanted to stay at the camp because I wanted to go sailing and that it would be fine. And she definitely appreciated how calm I was, because it meant she didn't freak out. She also appreciated that I got myself injured on the school's watch and not on her watch. She does this whenever I get injured. She appreciates that it is never under her responsibility that I get injured to the point where I have to go to the hospital. Which, that's one of my crowning achievements as a child. I don't freak my mother out by having to go to the hospital on her watch. I do it on other people's. Anyway, so I stayed at school. I stayed at the camp. I did the sailing. I was told by the sailing instructor that I was the best person they had on that ship all day, and I had a broken arm. I was only using one of my arms. I steered the ship very, very well. I had so much fun sailing. I love sailing. I love living out my piratical dreams vicariously on the sea. So that was very fun and totally worth staying at camp with a broken arm to do. And after that, a while after, almost at the point where I stopped using my sling, I remember being on the school bus. I definitely still had the sling on. I was on the school bus, and one of the sort of bullies, those mean people who seem to think it's okay to hurt others, shoved me in my arm or elbowed me in my broken arm. It was something along those lines, and I very calmly said to him, "Please don't do that. My arm is broken. That hurt a lot." He absolutely did not believe me. He said straight to my face that everyone thought I was faking the injury, which was so surprising to me. It's like, I got a doctor's diagnosis. I have to wear this. Do you think I would be wearing this sling if I didn't want, like, if I didn't have a broken arm? But apparently they were absolutely convinced that my arm was not broken. I told him not to do it again. He didn't. But again, it occurs to me now that they probably didn't believe me because I was so calm about it. I didn't cry. I was known for crying. I didn't cry when they shoved me very painfully in the arm. I was just like, "Please don't do that. The doctor said that could really mess up my healing. So I'd appreciate if you didn't deliberately hurt me or push me over or shove a chair into my arm," or something like that. If I'd cried, they would have believed me. In theory, but also I had a reputation for crying just to get attention, which was absolutely not true. But, people will believe whatever they're going to believe. I have spent this entire ramble stuck in this room. But that's the story of when I broke my arm and nobody believed me. Nobody believed me. I did end up actually eventually getting painkillers, which is good because I needed the painkillers. I don't ask for painkillers unless I need them. So, yeah. The moral of the story is that I was the best sailor there and that having a broken arm will not stop me. Thank you.